how much do you think your life is worth? On the black market. It's a jarring question, isn't it? We're often taught slavery is, well, history, a dark chapter done and dusted. But what if I told you that's just not true? What if slavery didn't vanish, but instead it just got smarter? Today we're taking a deep dive into modern slavery. Our mission is really to pull back the curtain on how exploitation has, evolved, from actual physical chains to these insidious, often digital forms. We'll unpack the sophisticated ways people are being bought, sold, controlled today, drawing on the insights from the sources you've shared. And this isn't some metaphor. The number, 40 million modern slaves, it's chillingly real. And the scary part, anyone could potentially become a victim.
It really is striking how the core goal, dehumanization, exploitation, is exactly the same as it was thousands of years ago. But the methods, they've changed completely. The physical chains, the open markets, they're mostly gone, replaced by invisible tech-driven methods. Makes it incredibly hard to even see, let alone fight. So yeah, we'll contrast the old and the new, show how this ancient evil has just sort of woven itself into our modern digital world.
Yeah, let's dig into that. The sources draw a really stark contrast. What did old slavery actually look like? How did it work, according to these materials?
Well, the picture of old slavery is grimly familiar, isn't it? Physical chains, people sold in open markets, public executions. Slaves were property. Voiceless things. The sources call them fuel for empires. Think Egypt, Rome, Byzantium, the Caliphate. It was brutal, yeah, but it was also very open, very visible.
And the control mechanism now, in 2025. How have things transformed?
Oh, it's a massive shift. Instead of shackles, control comes through, say, social media manipulation, or these so-called legal contracts, which are anything but fair. Coordination happens in anonymous chats, even using things like neural networks. And that makes it almost impossible to prove. Like the sources say, it's hidden in algorithms. That's the really insidious part. The chains aren't metal anymore, they're digital.
And the sources point out this really critical shift in perception, too. A slave used to be a thing. Now, the victim is a product. What's the deep implication there?
Exactly. That's a key insight. Old slavery was about controlling the physical body. Modern slavery, it exploits our digital self. Our biometrics, activity, data, behavioral patterns pulled from, everything we do online. It's not just about owning a person anymore. It's about owning and monetizing their entire digital identity, turning individuals into, commodities with a market price. And that makes the control so much deeper and, again, harder for anyone, including the victim sometimes, to spot.
So given this evolution, what forms does this take today? The sources lay out 4 distinct systems. Can you walk us through the first one they mention? It's tragically common.
Yes, the first is sexual exploitation. The victims here are mainly women, teenagers, and sometimes horribly even children. Often they're supplied from poorer nations to wealthier ones, and the money involved, it's sickening. Clients might pay, say, $50 to $500, maybe more. The person enslaved, they see zero. Absolutely nothing.
Right. And the sources bring up the Epstein Island case here. What do they highlight about that network?
Yeah, that's a stark example in the sources. A billionaire setting up this international network supplying girls to, elites. Princes, presidents, top financiers. And despite how serious it all was, the point made is that many of these powerful figures faced hardly any real consequences. It shows how the massive profits generated by this trade can actually create a kind of shield, Systemic complicity, really, driven by money.
Okay, then there's donor exploitation. Organ trafficking. The sources call this maybe the most profitable form. What are the details there? Pretty grim, I imagine.
Grim is an understatement. The numbers are horrifying. Average prices listed in our sources. A kidney, maybe $50,000. Liver, $150,000.
Right.
A heart, $500,000. Even an eye could go for $30,000. A complex set of organs, over $250,000. And the victims, often poor migrants or chillingly missing children, some apparently listed as models right before they just vanish.
Wow. Okay. The third system is labor exploitation. How does that usually start? And what's the end game for the victims?
It usually starts with lies, deception. People are lured in with these great promises of good salary, housing, proper documents, jobs in construction, farming, factories. But the reality? It's a nightmare. They get there. Everything's taken. Passports, phones, money. They're forced to work, often brutally until they basically die. And their bodies, often unidentified, no grave, just gone.
And the last one is really new territory. Digital slavery, not physical labor, but mental exploitation. What do the sources say about this?
Yeah, this is entirely different. The slave, so to speak, works with their mind. They might be connected to fake online chats used as what the sources call bot psychologists, or basically raw material for training AI, neural networks, sometimes even trained to manipulate other potential victims. And the really insidious thing is often the victims don't even realize they're enslaved. They think they're just doing remote work online. But they're trapped in a kind of digital cage.
Which really begs the question, who are the people doing this? The recruiters, what do the sources tell us about them?
They're described as manipulators, often skilled psychologists. Catchers is the term used. They seem friendly, maybe charming. They offer these amazing opportunities that sound too good to be true.
Because they usually are, right? And Kaises could be a friend, a blogger, someone acting like a legit agent. What tools are they using now? It sounds like it's getting sophisticated.
Extremely sophisticated. We're talking NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, deep fakes for video calls, fake documents that look real, automated recruitment funnels, leveraging AI tools we all know, like ChatGPT for scripting interactions, Midjourney for creating fake profiles or visuals. It's a scary mix of psychology and high tech.
There's a really chilling quote in the sources, a confession from someone who used to recruit. What do they say?
Yeah, it's stark. They said, I was paid $1,000 for one girl. She was then sold for $10,000. I thought it was just recruiting, but then I realized where they were going. It just shows how people can get involved on the edges, maybe not fully grasping the horror of where these victims actually end up until it's too late.
So for people listening, what are the lures? What makes people fall for these things, according to the sources? What should we be wary of?
Well, the sources point to some common things. Offers that seem just too perfect. Promises of quick, easy money. Jobs abroad that sound glamorous, like the blogger's life. Or sometimes it's just the desperate desire to help their family back home. But these are traps. The sources warn, free cheese only in a funnel. It sounds appealing, but the end result is devastating.
And this digital web, how does it actually work today to trap people?
It's woven right into our online lives. Social media is key. VPNs to hide locations, Telegram bots for automated communication, deepfake interviewers conducting video calls that seem completely real, and these automated funnels built with AI, they guide the victim step by step, feeding them just the right information to lead them into the cage. It's a sophisticated digital web, as the source calls it, where you yourself drive yourself into a cage. Scary thought.
Looking at the bigger picture, this is global. The sources mention origin countries, Ukraine, Philippines, Uzbekistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, and the destinations. Where do victims often end up?
Destinations listed include places like the UAE, Turkey, Russia, the USA, South Korea, Germany. It really shows the scale. A global supply chain for human beings.
And there's a really serious claim in the sources that in some countries, these networks have support right at the top, at elite levels. What does that mean for trying to stop this?
Well, the implication is that the sheer amount of money involved, the immense profits from slavery, can corrupt systems.
Yeah.
If powerful people are benefiting, it makes it incredibly difficult to dismantle these networks. It creates this systemic shield, a huge barrier to justice.
Which connects to why the traffickers often get away with it. The sources say things like fraud is framed as a contract, victims are too scared to talk. And they even allege involvement from police, border guards, politicians who are supposedly in on the scheme. Pretty grim.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it raises questions about the actual legal consequences. Look at the punishment discrepancy mentioned. In Russia, yeah, the law says 3-10 years. But reality, often just delays, fines, maybe probation. Europe, sentences up to 15 years. But how many cases actually get to court? Very few, it seems. The USA allows for life sentences, but that often requires political resonance, a big high-profile case. So there's this huge gap between the law on the books and what actually happens, which of course lets the cycle continue.
The personal stories included really bring home how insidious this is.
Yeah.
Can you share the story of Maria Kovalchuk?
Yeah, Maria's story is a powerful warning. She was a 23-year-old Ukrainian model back in 2022. Lured via Instagram to Dubai. Looked like a totally legit fashion contract. Free flights, place to stay, documents all arranged. Seemed perfect. She signed papers right at the airport. Within 48 hours, her freedom was gone. She endured 6 months of rape, isolation. When she finally got home, it was under threat. Say anything, you disappear. It just shows how quickly things can turn.
And the story of Tulasa Thapa from Nepal. Truly tragic.
Heartbreaking. She was just 13. Her family sent her to India to marry someone they thought was a good man. Instead, she suffered 12 years of horrific abuse. She was only rescued because she got pregnant. But even then, the story doesn't end there. Her child was then sold. It just shows the layers of vulnerability, especially for children in certain situations.
We also have that anonymous shock story, the person who thought it was a dream job.
Right. Contacted on Instagram, recruiters seemed polite, professional video calls looked like a cool startup, but then, their words, 3 days later I was in another country, 3 weeks later I wasn't myself. It's just a